Hello, friends. Greetings from Anshman Tiwari and your channel Manage Better. I'm back today, and this is a very special episode for me because this is the 25th live episode that I'm doing, not counting the qualitist ones that I do. So, 25th is a kind of a milestone for an amateur guy that like me who's trying to build a community around how people can learn things that they want to learn and get better. Right? So, like many of you know, and those of you who are new to the channel and show, welcome. But very quickly, what I'm trying to do is working on the premise that all of us can get better. Wherever we are, we can get better from there. Nobody is dealt the winning hand, winning cards. Everybody has the same cards more or less. Some have better, some have maybe not so better. But we certainly, all of us can certainly get better. So with that premise, what I do is that I invite consultants, authors, coaches, people from all over, people who've actually shown the world as to how things can be done better. And, since I have slight privilege of having that access, I bring them to you. And hopefully that helps some of you to get better. So that's the premise. As we get a little deeper into the show, just a quick check. I can see we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube today. So, Biswajit, thank you very much. Already posting. That also tells me that the LinkedIn live feed is working, right? So, I can already see some people live on YouTube as well. So, if you can give me a shout out that this is working, that would be fantastic. Technology, we will learn today, and this is a very technology oriented show. Technology can fail, right? So we do all the testing, double check, triple check, everything, but sometimes it does fail. So I will not stand between you and the guest today. The guest is a very, very special person, and I've been trying to get him on the show for some time, but keeping his schedule and lives across multiple countries, I still don't understand and know how he manages this. But we'll probably ask him that, right? So um, this is the book that prompted me to invite the guest today. So those who didn't catch the book, this is the Tech Whisperer, absolute bestseller and even if it had not sold one more copy than the one I bought, I would have still loved the book. So that's the kind of association that I have with this book for a few years now, 2-3 years. Of course, it came out 3-4 years ago, and the author is Jaspreet Bindra. So I will introduce him and then bring him onto the show. But 4 years ago, and there is the author is Jaspreet Bindra. There is an echo of my own voice, which is never a good thing, but hopefully that has gone now. Um, so Jaspreet, of course, is you know well known because of this book, but that's not his only claim to fame. And I wanted to quickly, share something about him other than the book, right? So, book everybody knows. He's MD and founder of Tech Whisper Limited UK, which does a lot of advisory and consulting work on digital transformation, digital technologies like AI, blockchain, future of work, and related stuff. He represents Findability Sciences, a SoftBank invested enterprise AI firm, as their chief tech whisperer. What else, right? So, and he's also pursuing. So he's not done yet. He's pursuing his master's in AI ethics and society at Cambridge University while he's in the UK. Mostly works out of UK these days. So Jaspreet was group chief digital officer at Mahindra Group. We all know in India about the Mahindra Group, and he was earlier regional director of Microsoft as well. He's of course the author of this fantastic book, Tech Whisperer. He has also written another book, which is the Immune Organization, which came out during the pandemic and actually talks about future-proofing organizations from COVID-like disruptions. And he's also very, very widely popular. Uh, and these two books kind of define his work for the last few years. He was recognized earlier by as the inaugural Digitalist of the Year by Mint and SAP in 2017. He's a global educator for Harvard Business and was scholar in residence at the Indian School of Business. He is also a partner and chapter leader of Singularity University, and the list goes on, right? So I will bring him in quickly so that we can say hi to him. Hi, Jaspreet. Thank you, first of all, for being here. Um, and we will get into the questions. But before that, I just want to let people also know that, Jaspreet, of course, like I said, lives across continents. So currently, we are lucky that today he's in India and he's able to find time for us today. So thank you for that, Jaspreet. We will quickly get into the show because there is a long list of questions that I have for you, and during the show, if you have anything additional to share, also more than welcome. So just a quick, we got some, yeah. So everything working right. So my first question, Jaspreet, and this should not be any surprise at all. So you've been in the digital transformation space for a long time, and both as practitioner and little bit as a teacher and a educator as well, moderator, consultant. So in that space, multiple roles in that space, and that gives you a far better picture of what is digital transformation than anybody who would probably be playing one role. So my simple question is that while digital transformation is many things to many people, what is it for you? In simple terms, yeah. So over to you. You are on mute, Jasprit. So
Thank you for giving me back my voice. Thanks, Anshuman. First, before I answer the question, thank you very much for having me on Manage Better. And as you said, I do roam around even during COVID, a couple of continents, not more than that, India and Cambridge. Kind of divide my time between the two, and that's been one of the reasons perhaps we've not been able to meet on this show earlier. But it's good to be here and look forward to this conversation. Coming to your specific question, uh, you're right, digital transformation. Digital transformation became a buzzword, if I may say so, transformation or search for digital transformation, you will find multiple answers. Are you able to hear me okay,
yes,
Anshuman? Okay, lovely.
there was a 10-second break, but you're back now.
That's fine. You'll find different definitions. There are academic definitions. There are definitions that multiple consultants have, etc. But as you know, as you rightly said, I've been a practitioner, and so digital transformations means two or three things for me. First of all, number one, it's both digital and transformation. Many times we just focus on the digital part. There's a whole lot of actual tough people, culture, process transformation involved. Number one. Number two is it's actually different from digitization. We tend to kind of confuse the two. And digitization is inside out about making a process faster, more efficient. Digital transformation many times is a business model and a company level change. If you were to take Meru cabs and make it better, faster, cheaper, you will digitize it. But if you were to convert it into an Uber or an Ola, you would kind of digitally transform it. Digital transformation number three to me also is the same as business transformation. There's no difference. Actually, because for any business transformation, you require digital tools and technologies by default. It is called digital transformation. And therefore, it needs to be owned by the leader of the business, the CEO. It's not the CIO or the CTO. But fourth and final, what it really means to me above all three, and there are three, four different views. It's about being tech at core. It's about business models. It's about customer experience, etc. But the most important thing is when a lot of people when they ask me what is the definition of digital, and many of us think digital. When we think digital, we think different from analog, or we think that atoms rather or bytes rather than atoms. Okay, and all those are good definitions, but digital to me in a transformation or an enterprise context is frankly a state of mind. Okay, it's what how you think, how you work, uh, 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 how you collaborate, how you work with teams. Very different from a non-digital way of working. Digital way is far more agile. It's far more small teams, far faster, far more celebrating failure, etc. And so, while there are many things which digital transformation means, it's basically how you transform your mindset. And therefore, finally, to kind of complete what I say is that digital transformation does not happen in the boardroom or in the cubicles or in the market or in the factory. It happens between your two ears, actually in your head. and that is digital transformation to me.
Oh, wonderful. I think, so the first three, of course, some of us would have read in your books and blogs, and if the people who've been following you. But I particularly like the digitization bit because, I've spoken about this topic with other authors as well on this channel. And this is one common point, Jaspreet, that everybody has made from Australia to UK to US is that let's not confuse. Firstly, it is at the end of the day transformation, and we don't forget that there is a lot of change management required, which is good old school change management. Still people are required, everybody is that is still the same. And the digitization part uniquely seems to be common thread across all people who've done something. So people who are only reading about it tend to think it is different, but people who've done something about it certainly know, like you just said. So thank you for that. Just a quick reminder to our audience: you can start posting your questions after a bit. I will start taking questions at around half time to the show, but you are free to post questions or your comments, and we will pick them up as we get along the show. So the next question, Jaspreet, of course, is more around the cryptocurrency part. And but the question is not on cryptocurrency. You might have guessed that. So um, uh, I can't afford it. You might not want it, and so we will stay away from that topic. And it is in the news for various topics, for government taxing it and all these other things. But that is more or less out of scope for us, for our discussion. What I wanted to use that to land at is the blockchain concept that you have shared in your book and your wildly popular TEDx talk. So it will not leave you. It's been 4 5 years, I know that talk, but it will not leave you. So for the audience, I want to quickly give this overview so that you understand why I'm chuckling away at this. Is that in this wildly popular TED talk, and you can search for it. I will leave a link as well. And he Jaspreet talked about the core concepts of cryptocurrency and why, and quickly went on to explain blockchain in a way that only he can explain in the entire world. That explanation you will not get anywhere. It is there in the book, so if you haven't read this, you can do that. But since he's live with us, we will ask him to share that explanation of how blockchain is very similar to a very very Indian, North Indian concept, which I will not steal his thunder and let him share. So, Jaspreet, over to you for the uh, unique explanation that you have for blockchain, and then maybe taking it to a little technical space as to why you think it works, uh, and so on. So, and then we'll get into the next question. So, over to you.
No, thanks, Achuman. I know that TEDx talk. It's my first TEDx talk, and actually, I was going to be speaking on another topic, and then the organizer said, "No, no, no, you must speak on this." And it actually for that TEDx Chennai, which is a fairly good TEDx, it has become their most watched talk of all time, uh, for whatever reasons. So I'm very proud of it, very happy with it. Uh, I also want to say that while we will not talk about crypto, for reasons which frankly are that there are so many more experts than I on crypto. But I do want to say that crypto and blockchain are integral to each other. They're not the same thing, but there's no public blockchains without crypto, and frankly, no cryptos without blockchain. And so, and without crypto, a public blockchain would not work. Something which many governments do not understand as they try and separate out the two. But coming to blockchain, there are a couple of things about. See, blockchain is a difficult concept to understand. Unlike many other technologies, the title of the technology doesn't explain the technology. So artificial intelligence is simple. Artificial intelligence. You know English, understand what it would be. Internet of Things or virtual reality. Okay. But blockchain doesn't mean anything. Yeah, and so it doesn't. And therefore it's conceptually difficult, and it was difficult for me also. And I had been trying. There are many different analogies and simplifications which many authors have and experts have done very well. Uh, but I kind of hit upon something which I thought was good and it's become quite popular. And as you said, unique to me so far at least. Um, there are two things about blockchain which you must understand before I get into the analogy. One is that blockchain is a great decentralizer. Whatever is centralized, it seeks to distribute or decentralize. And if you want to decentralize something, it's one of the better technologies to use. So crypto is decentralized money, in that sense. The second important thing is, and which is a little more difficult to understand, is what in technology we call it's a trustless network. It basically means trustless doesn't mean you don't, it has less trust, but trustless means you don't need a trusted authority. So the network itself provides a level of trust, and so that's why bringing decentralized trust is all what blockchain is about. Now, while all this is good, I thought that this was very similar to something which, as a child, one had grown up with my mother participating and many other people participating, and the concept of what is called a kitty party. Now, kitty parties actually exist across many countries in the world. They're called differently. Okay, in India, it's called kitty party, and you know what happens in a kitty party? A bunch of people, usually women, come together and they, have for a couple of hours, and they'll have lunch and they'll have fun, they'll gossip, they'll drink tea, whatever. Uh, but they also do one more important thing, which is each one of them brings some money. So if there are 10 women around the table, each one of them will bring, say, 1,000 rupees, and that makes it 10,000 rupees, and that 10,000 becomes the kitty. And that is why it's called a kitty party. There's no other reason, as we might be thinking. Okay, but that kitty, then there's a lucky draw. That's the high point of the whole party. There's a lucky draw, and then one woman wins, and she takes the 10,000. The important thing is that next time when the same party happens, the first woman who won the last time is not allowed to participate in the lucky draw, though everyone brings 1,000 rupees again. And so, in some sense, each kitty party is linked to immutably to the last kitty party. And pretty much like in a blockchain, each block is immutably linked to the last block. Okay, and that's one of the reasons it makes it unhackable or less hackable, etc. But the thing which struck me was that when everyone is bringing 1,000 rupees and they're putting that 1,000 rupees on the table, who are they trusting with that 1,000 rupees? And there's no one boss lady or banker lady there, okay, who's the trusted authority, the centralized trusted authority. No. And what I realized was that they actually trust each other. They trust all of them. So if there are 10 women, the other nine have to be hacked or won over for the money to be taken away, or at least the majority of the women have to be won over for the money to be taken away. So they are trusting each other. And this concept of decentralized trust, okay, is what is really the core concept behind the blockchain. Very difficult for us to understand, even though we know kitty parties, because we've grown up in a centralized authority world. Okay, Reserve Bank will, and there's always a central authority which controls stuff. While here, there's no central authority. You're trusting each other, and that makes it trustworthy and therefore trustless in that sense. Okay, it's decentralized. It is immutably linked to what the blockchain also has. Each kitty party is linked to the last kitty party, etc. And so therefore my analogy, simplistic analogy of the blockchain as a kitty party.
So that's wonderful. Hearing from the person who originated the concept, I've heard it differently from different people who've referred to your talk, but hearing directly from you, and I hope the audience likes it. That talk must have changed your career and a few other careers as well. And I have one such person in the call, Shalini, who's
Yeah,
thanking you for that call, that for that talk, where she seems like she got into blockchain and successfully. So good for her. So it made a difference to quite a few. Uh, just moving that analogy forward, and I know every analogy has a limit to which it can be
Yeah, yeah,
stretched, right? So you did mention also in the book later on as and in the talk as well. If you take this concept further, there is something called chit fund, which is also very
yeah, yeah,
popular across, right? So of course, one limit of the analogy of kitty party is that it is a very small number of people, and therefore the need for trust or no trust is probably simpler. But when you explore that concept, it becomes a chit fund, which is no different actually. So a little bit on that, and then we move on to the next
yeah.
topic.
No, first of all, thanks, Shalini. I am very flattered by this. I know she's told me this earlier. We've never met yet, but she's told me this earlier on LinkedIn, etc. That, and I would love to know that story, how that changed, your career, etc. So thank you for that. But coming back, actually, funnily, I thought of the chit fund before I thought of the kitty party.
Uh,
Okay, and it just came to me because of this whole decentralized thing. Because a chit fund, if you think about it, is a decentralized bank in many ways. Okay, and this brings me to a very interesting part, the philosophy, in a sense, behind blockchain. There are two, three different philosophies. I'll not go into each one of those. Very fascinating. I love blockchain because of the philosophy rather than the technology. But you know, way back, many generations back, we used to live together, say in small villages or hunting groups or whatever, and all our transactions were pure peer to peer. You give something, you get something. Obviously it became bigger, you couldn't like always give something and get something what you wanted, and so some sort of money started coming in. There were shells, or they were salt. So the word salary comes from salt, actually. Okay,
hmm.
or different such things which cowrie shells, if you remember, the word were used, and the word footy cowrie comes from cowrie shells. So, there's a lot of interesting history of money. And all of these were used locally. So everyone had their own money. Every village has its own money. Sometimes rich people had their own kind of money, and people would trust them. And so money also was a peer-to-peer thing. And then the world became bigger, countries started happening, you couldn't start doing this. And so banks happened, central banks happened, and the world started centralizing because it was more efficient to be centralized. uh, However, banks as we know today in India cover possibly less single digit percentage of the rural population. It's unbanked, and but people still need that. People still need a safe place to put money which will grow, and that's how chit funds actually came in to fill that gap. And chit funds are decentralized money. It's one, it's kind of a lot of people give money, and it's kind of held in one place. And I'll not get into the mechanics of chit funds, but the unfortunate part is that chit funds also became more famous for people who were big frauds and made a lot of money out of poor people rather than being used in the right way. And I started thinking that, blockchain came in essentially to solve decentralization at scale, which was not possible, which was possible at a village level, but not at a. And so, is there a way that that could be solved at scale? That was something at decentralized banking at scale, and how blockchain could solve it. And you're absolutely right. It's nothing but a kitty party multiplied by 100,000, okay, or million, or whatever money it is. And so, if the principle can be used here, the principle can also be used at a higher level. And therefore, what blockchain can potentially do, I mean, if you think about it, if you think of Uber, for example, we think it's decentralization of transportation, or e-commerce we think as decentralization of retail. It actually isn't. Uh, Uber is the big centralizer, or Amazon is the big centralizer. So there's no P2P. There's P to A to P, or P to U to P, okay, which is Uber, or P to Z to P, which is Zomato. So it's not restaurants directly coming to us. But blockchain actually has the ability to decentralize this, and similarly chit funds. And just yesterday, I read this very interesting tweet by a guy who said that rather than Zomato and Swiggy controlling food delivery, can restaurants and users directly work on a blockchain, immutable timestamps, records, money will get paid on the blockchain, and no intermediary fees in that sense. The riders get what both of them give. And he in fact said that the tech would be built as open source. People will do it just because they want money to come at home. So it's just an example, but that's what blockchain promises to do: to decentralize, to make stuff go back to peer, and that's where chit funds came in.
No, and I think as you were saying, I did also realize that this talk has been around for a while. That what we see today as the use cases of internet are
Yeah,
exactly what the internet was not meant to do.
yeah,
The centralization that we see was exactly what it was against. It This is not what people had dreamt of or imagined, but we've landed where we have landed, and it is a matter of time that some interested parties or groups will start building tech which will be, like you said, you know truly decentralized in many ways, and peer to peer. Come to think of it, what will it take for a popular restaurant to engage with me directly and say, okay, you seem to be ordering once a month, if you let us know that's your pattern, we'll be happy to service you. And if this can be done in a very immutable way, or yeah, fantastic, that's possible. While we were speaking, Shalini has promised you that story, so there is little bit of that. I think one quick one. So Abhirup, your question around, can you see the recording? Yes, of course. All these shows on this, since you are messaging from the LinkedIn page, you can see it on the same LinkedIn page even if you come back after a day to a year or so, right? So don't worry about that. This is recorded and stays on the same page, right? So if you have something to do and you can't stay on, you can get back to the recording. And this is of course true for YouTube as well, so, and Facebook. Fantastic. So I just wanted to remind the audience also that in this answer, you saw the quizzer in Jaspreet come out, right? So he told us very quickly about what is the origin of the word salt, or salary, and how Kuti Kodi comes in, and a few other things, right? And not very well known is the fact that, or people like you and me, many of us will, if we went to the brand equity quiz once, even sat in the audience, we will put it in our resume. If we went into the main draw, then we will certainly put it on our resume. This man on the screen, Jaspreet Bindra, is a three-time winner of that brand equity quiz. So you're talking to somebody who knows his stuff, right? So Jaspreet, I know that you don't talk about it much, but I wanted to talk about it because for many of us who got to know you, like many of us got to know you after the TEDx talk. But people like me knew about you before the TEDx talk because of
quizzing,
that brand
quizzing
equity
was
quiz.
good to me, Anshuman. Sorry to interrupt, but yes, I won it thrice nationally. I won it regionally a couple times, and all of that gave me the first 5 years. I didn't buy any consumer durable. Okay, my first foreign trip,
Uh,
international trip ever, was to Hong Kong and Thailand, courtesy brand equity. And then my first European trip ever, Western trip, London, was courtesy brand equity. So yeah, quizzing was good to me. Sorry, back to you.
no, no. So I just wanted to mention it because I didn't want to hold that back, and uh, that gives you a very vantage point. I've been a little bit of an amateur quizzer, and I always felt that because of the fact that you interact with other quizzers, you get to know a lot of things which you will otherwise never get to know, and you become a little more open-minded because you want to learn about multiple things, uh, and are always open about it. So that's a a side conversation that I just thought I'll bring in. Moving on with the quick few questions that I wanted to ask. Like we discussed, we're not this show is not about crypto, and probably we are not the right people to talk about it as well. But crypto is one use case of blockchain in many ways, right? So like you said, if blockchain is not around, no crypto can exist, right? So of some kind. So but there have to be more use cases for this thing to be useful to society. In your talks and books and blogs, I've read about, and I've also spoken to people like in India, the Telangana and Andhra Pradesh governments are trying to digitize the land records, and by digitizing is actually the first step towards blockchain, using blockchain for that. Uh, this is one use case we know, and you know more about it. So can you, maybe share this concept, and if any other use case you know of, that would be lovely.
Well, there are many. Unfortunately, though, many times I mentioned that blockchain is in POC land, proof of concept land. Bunches of proof of concepts have happened. Very few things have happened at scale. Crypto is one use case in some sense which has happened at scale. Now there are a couple more at scale, and I'll come to that. But even before that, there are many use cases. There are use cases at an enterprise level, use cases at a country level, and use cases at a global level. And use cases at a enterprise level are many in the BFSI industry. Remittances can be much more efficient. Exchanges of any kind, stock exchanges or whatever, can be made more peer to peer, more efficient. Uh, there are multiple other there's in trade finance, there's invoicing, in supply chain finance. There's a lot of use cases, manufacturing. There are a bunch of use cases in enterprises, and I've personally been involved in building a couple in invoice discounting and in identity. More important than that are country level use cases, which is what really interests me. And these are, if you think of the basic concept, it's decentralizing stuff. Again, everything is getting a lot more centralized in countries. Okay, so from one level, there are use cases in energy. How you decentralize energy, how you move from central power station and distribution based energy to a local, decentralized, distributed solar, etc. energy. Blockchain has nothing to do with solar, but the plumbing behind that, and the way you could do smart contracts to transfer energy, design smart grids. Agriculture has very good use cases which could solve many of our agricultural problems. Pooling of land, uh, mechanization, and therefore kind of sharing rental of tractors and other mechanization things. The Telangana, another thing that you mentioned of having immutable land records is very important. What that gives, immutable land records are not only about stealing land. More important than that is how they can be used to get financing at much cheaper rates than what is there right now. Education has amazing use cases, fraudulent loans, blockchain degrees, just reducing the sheer amounts of paper or transcripts that are necessary when you move from country to country, etc. Uh, there are use cases in identity. Aadhaar kind of stuff on blockchain will have certain much more better kind of a better way to build identity. Voting, and lacking, preventing hacking in voting. And there are many other country level use cases. Estonia has done a wonderful job. There are other countries doing good stuff. India is experimenting with a bunch of things. But what I'm most excited by are the global use cases. Okay, and to build a new kind of social networking, as Musk said he will with Twitter. Okay, decentralized social network. Open source, where users are in control, where data is not sold, is. But I think the even more exciting, and which have started happening now in scale, uh, the what is called the creator economy or the passion economy. Where individuality is monetized, and so people who are artists can now do stuff through and can make money through NFTs, for example, or the Substacks of the world, where writers can make money without actually going to large publishers. Uh, Photographers can make money. There are a lot of sites. So this whole, therefore this future of work, and therefore this whole thing of how, if you are talented, you can now earn money without actually working for an organization. And therefore, in many ways, organizations are getting decentralized by blockchain. Remember, it's a decentralizing force. Is a massive use case. The metaverse is a use case, okay, at a global level, because a lot of it is powered by crypto and powered by blockchain-based decentral. So you wouldn't be surprised that the largest metaverse property is decentral land, and there is a
Hmm.
reason why it's called decentral land. Okay, it's all about decentralization. So there are multiple use cases. If you had asked me this question a year back, Anshuman, or a year and a half back, I would have said that crypto is the
use case.
only scale use case. But now the the future passion economy oriented stuff like NFTs or the metaverse, etc., are, I think, other big, massive global use cases other than the country and the enterprise use cases.
No, I'm glad that you brought out a multitude of a total range of this, and like you said, much of this will take time to become a reality, and it could take even a decade to for us to see this really going wrong. But for something to happen a decade down the line, it has to start now. That's how most change happens, and Bill Gates famous saying that we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what will happen in a decade. So this is the same kind of technology that if we are expecting everything to change in a year, that's not going to happen. But if we are neglecting it over a decade, we are being foolish around that. So, uh, and as I think one more point that you made, I was reading about it and speaking to a couple of people about this creator economy. So there is already talk of large, not 100, 200, but people who have millions of followers across the world, they're becoming actually investable assets. So people in near future can actually buy shares into them. so
Yeah.
imagine, a celebrity, Jaspreet Bindra, millions of followers, people could buy shares into what you do weekly, and you become actually, celebrity asset. You or other people like you. That's a completely different, mind blowing concept that could be possible
Fractional,
because of platform. Yeah,
yeah, fractional ownership.
correct. Fractional ownership of individual entities and not organizations. So there are a few questions, and since the next couple of questions are more around IoT and all, I will, there are a couple of questions around blockchain, so I will take them, and then we can go. Hassan, Sayed Hassan, is a good friend and out of Chennai, and from a city you love. So he's asking, he's into management of mutual funds and that kind of stuff. So he's asking anything live cases around BFSI that you are aware of.
Oh, Hassan, you know, I there are a few hundred live cases globally in BFSI. Okay, and I'm even in remittances itself, there would be maybe 20. Okay, Abra is one company, ABRA, which is possibly one of the leaders in that. In fact, Ratan Tata invested in it, if I'm not surprised, though it's a global company. Has achieved some level of scale in remittances. There are bunches of companies in I'm trying to remember the names in supply chain finance, which is another big area. You think about shipping, for example. The amount of documents involved in shipping, the amount of stages involved, the amount of inefficiency, therefore, okay, is crazy. Bills of ladings and and so there's a lot of those in shipping. A very interesting work happening from a company I know in Bangalore in invoicing. I mean, again, invoicing is a broken process. The amount of processes broken in BFSI are amazing. Actually, I'm sorry to say that you come from BFSI, but imagine the amount of time it takes to clear an invoice for someone who's a external person, say someone who's a consultant. Okay, it goes through so many stages. It has to have so many different things tick marked before an invoice can be cleared and money comes in. And half the time, half the accounting departments are sitting just trying to reconcile invoices and things like that. And therefore, there's a whole lot of work happening, and that's frankly a multi-billion-dollar opportunity to simplify invoicing, and use blockchain is being used for that. Mutual funds, I don't know, frankly, any particular use cases. Not in my knowledge. It's not something I work in. One of the things people think about is because of my blessed TEDx video is that I'm a blockchain expert. I did a video. I'm not an expert. Okay, and I did a couple of use cases. Sure, I wrote some stuff, but I work a lot more actually in artificial intelligence. I work a lot more in digital transformation. So, because I cannot claim myself to be a blockchain expert across all sectors. Mutual funds, the only thing I can say is that look, I very quickly foresee uh, a situation where crypto and a bunch of such fractional assets that Anshuman spoke about become part of portfolios. Okay, and therefore become part of mutual fund portfolios. I mean, buying fractional assets of property, buying fractional assets of machinery, and as you rightly said, buying fractional assets of people. Going forward, buying fractional assets of people's personal data, which is a currency. Okay, and therefore people creating mutual funds out of that. Little futuristic, but simple mutual fund use cases. I'm sorry, I'm not into it and aware of it at this point of time.
No problem. I think certainly the so Hassan, I am not like just we said, we don't know much about this, but certainly in the servicing of mutual funds, which is usually the more painful activity, certainly blockchain and related activities could be useful, which is like servicing any loan or any BFSI asset. Moving on, one quick question from Ashok Kumar. He's a regular on our show, so gets a little bit priority in his questions. Little, I think you've addressed this question, Jaspreet, but if you want to take it quickly, digital transformation, essentially process transformation through digitalization or part subset of a bigger technological change. So, Ashok, this was
Yeah.
answered, but anything,
So one of the things a lot of people confuse digital transformation with is technology. Okay, they think that if you do blockchain, for example, or you do an AI implementation, for example, you're doing digital transformation. The answer, unfortunately, is no. So why do you need to transform a company? Technology change, as you said, Ashok, could be one reason for that. But that's one reason. Sure, Netflix has happened, and so either Blockbuster had to transform or die, and it chose to die. Yeah, but technology change, which propelled the Netflix thing happening, is one factor. There are three other big possible changes. Sometimes those changes are bigger many times than technology change itself. Environmental change, something changes in the environment, a war happens, for example, okay, and you need to change, okay. Regulatory change, sometimes regulatory changes drive a change in a company, the way it acts, etc. But most important actually is customer change. The customers change much faster, and a lot of the Uberization kind of economy is happening, not because of that technology is available, but because customers today prefer to rent stuff rather than own stuff. There's a massive customer change. So digital transformation or transformation needs to happen because of any of these changes, and technology is one- could be one change, but technologies are great tools to make that change happen, and that's how you need to view technology in that sense. Finally, which mindset will help in implementation success? The answer is about 10 odd different mindset books. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that it's a very, very complex answer. All I would say is you need a quote unquote digital mindset. And what is a digital mindset either is a separate question or is a big chapter in my book or in other books. Just give me
or
a
any,
moment to
sure,
close the window. There's some sound coming from outside.
sure. So while Jaspreet handles what he has to handle, very quickly, a quick reminder to all of you. There are quite a few questions which have come in, but like we are saying, we are not getting into the details of blockchain in this call. So we will skip some questions. I saw a question from Pradeep, Aditya, and Shanli will try and take up your question a little later. So Jaspreet is back in the call now. Uh, there are some questions around interesting application to income tax, but it's very dangerous these days to talk about income tax on directly, but we'll come to that. Let me change the topic a little bit. We've had a little bit of blockchain quite a bit, and I'm mindful that we have only 15 minutes left into the show, and I will want to respect Jaspreet's time. So the next topic I would like to cover quickly, and this is more from your digital transformation experience and how the technology space and people and technology, all these connections, and you are seen as a bridge between work and technology. So that's the reason this question. Internet of Things is all around us already. Quite a lot of stuff is happening around Internet of Things or IoT. What can we expect in the next few years, and you know have you come across any fascinating use cases or examples in this case that blew your mind? So something in the IoT space that um,
So,
yeah.
so let me disappoint you again by saying that I'm not an expert in IoT. Okay. Look,
No
what
problem.
happens is if I draw back, technology is like life. And it is very difficult to be a life expert. There are life coaches, I know, but it's very difficult to be like, okay, I know everything about everything in life. Technology has become that big. And there are so many fascinating aspects. I mean, the stuff that you said, Anshuman, but solar is a technology, nuclear fission, there is so much stuff happening, quantum computing, there is amazing stuff happening, genetics, microbiome. So there's like this whole, and so while I really enjoy reading about stuff and writing about it and simplifying it and sometimes acting as the bridge that you said, Anshuman, on all the different things that I mentioned, which sometimes are far more fascinating than the technologies we get obsessed by. The biological technologies, for example, are just they just leave these physical technologies in the dust, okay, in many ways, in the things that are. And therefore, I myself am guilty of giving this impression that I know everything about everything, but I don't. Okay. So I focus on a few. IoT is not one of them. And it's a,
No problem. So
yeah, yeah, sorry.
we'll,
Yeah,
yeah, I think while you were talking about this, it reminded me that I've been also trying to get a speaker on the biological part that you mentioned, and there is so much advancement in the gut-related, genome technology. It is now quote unquote possible to edit our genomes through CRISPR. And if that becomes a reality, and today one can buy our own genome in less than $100,
yeah,
so which was thousands of dollars a few years ago. So if that pace of technology continues, we would be not needing digital. We will probably not be talking digital technology, but maybe what biological technology or something at some
yeah.
point. But yeah, let's move on. Hassan has, thanks for you, and of course, a good recommendation for your book. He specifically mentioned your Sumatra story, so thanks, Hassan, on our
Which
behalf.
story? Sorry, which story?
Sumatra story. I refer to the
Ah,
Sumatra story, Native Digital, and Ten
yeah,
Commandments.
yeah,
Ten
yeah,
Commandments. I also loved completely. Jaspreet, the most loved one, or the fascinating one that has stayed in my mind is the last one, which is patience. The commandment, which is something that we miss when we are working on digital transformation. All transformation has to happen yesterday, and nothing really happens yesterday. So um, there are quite a few questions, but I also wanted to, since you are also doing some work in, or studies, actually not so much work, in AI ethics and related matters. There is this whole thing around, all this technology raises concern for privacy, and maybe many technology related mishaps are happening. One could argue that the percentage of technology mishaps or technology enabled or mishaps are actually far lesser than the actual mishaps. But there are, these do get limelight, like if a Tesla car crashes, it is global news. Every other car crashes hundreds of times every day. That's not news. But I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about your views on the data privacy or ethics that may get compromised because of this advancement in technology so much. Anything on that?
sure. I'll try and restrict myself because it's my passion area these days. But just going back to the different technologies, etc., etc. A good framework to think about technologies is these three particles. The atom is one, the byte is another, and the gene is the third. Okay, and we tend to focus a lot on the byte these days. Okay, because we are kind of on digital and AI and blockchain and stuff. the atom is very fascinating. All the materials technologies that are happening, and is just, and actually it's technology started with the atom part, then with all the industrial revolution. Okay, how we manipulated the atoms, and then it kind of came to the byte part, and now which was far bigger than the atom part, and now will come the gene part, which is going to be far bigger than the byte part. Okay, and it will completely, as you said, has the power to change everything. But what it also raises is, what has happened is that all the three, the atom, the byte, and the gene, have basically made technology perhaps the single most powerful human invented factor of our life. Okay, things like earthquakes and volcanoes, etc., are also as powerful, but they are not invented by humans. The one before that was atomic energy, which is what the atom part was. Okay, and it could be massively useful or it could completely destroy. And the world had to come together to restrain it, okay, and keep it boxed in a sense. And that's why after 1945, we have not seen the malevolent side of that technology. And hopefully, this particular war does not change that. But now we need to figure out how we manage the byte technologies. Okay, and I'm not even coming to the gene part, which is a totally different Pandora's box. So, and within all these digital technologies, I think it's inarguably the one which is regarded universally the most powerful is artificial intelligence. And it's a very different kind of technology because we're creating literally clones of ourselves. And there are lots of interesting books about it. One of them which says that basically the title of the book is man's final invention. Okay, question mark. Okay, and it's literally that is AI our last invention, because after that the AI itself will be more intelligent and powerful than human beings, and it will be doing all the inventing while we'll become quote unquote vegetables. And so there's a lot of concern about AI. Practically the autonomous cars that you said, bigger than that in my opinion is AI weapons. Okay, which the drones and the massive AI weaponry, which is being developed as we speak. Okay, and there are so many others. The thing is that human beings are creating it, and they're doing it now. And it's a very small subset of the human race, mostly based in Silicon Valley, okay, which is creating this. And they're creating it based on what they think, okay, and with their biases and with their thinking and outlook, and they're all engineers. Uh, and therefore, the need for a much bigger dialogue. And it started happening, actually. Every NGO, every country, every large multilateral organization, every company has now an AI vision. Okay, and so it started happening. And the need for, therefore, humanists, philosophers, maybe even religious figures, historians, to get into this debate about and then figure out how AI should be made. And therefore, the why I'm doing this course, AI Ethics and Society at Cambridge, is actually a course run by the departments of philosophy and history, not by the business school or the engineering school, where you would normally think
Hmm.
something like it would be. Uh, the perspective I'm getting is just, if you think of me as an expert on technology, and therefore you have me on your Manage Better show. Okay, the reason is, if you think I know about technology, I realize I know nothing, nothing, zero. Because the humanities view, the philosophy view, the history view, the sociological, the anthropological, the psychological, even the medical view is just so much bigger on how these technologies are, what they are, and what they can do. And that's why a lot of ethical questions which need to be answered not by engineers or business people only, but by liberal arts. And that's my fascination and my obsession these days.
No, but, and maybe by quote unquote politicians as well, because ultimately
Yeah,
governments will be
yeah,
in their hands,
yeah.
and there have to be some people with the sense that is required to manage this. And while you were talking, this thought occurred to me that throughout history, that whenever there is a large change force, there is also a counterbalancing force. So when barter system changed to a currency system, there were many forces. Empires came down because of that. When weapons were invented, there were other forces, and the world order changed in many ways. And so this is also a world order changing kind of a mark in history. And you and I may not be around when the final chapter is written, but we are certainly witnessing a change which has probably not been seen in the last 300-400 years, in the last 10-15 years, the kind of change. There are quite a few more questions, Jaspreet, but I am very mindful of the time that I took from you. Anand has helped us with some coining the word, but Anand,
Unfortunately, it exists.
it does exist. So, Anand, your copyright is taken away, but thanks for the input. Anand also had a question on income tax and all, but I'm skipping some of these questions
Skip,
because I
skip,
want to ask.
skip the tax one. I don't know the answer.
None of us want to take an income tax related question, certainly. But quickly, before we close the show on time, Jaspreet, we of course highly recommend. Earlier, Hassan recommended. I recommend your book. You know, strongly. If you had to recommend another book or a few other books that people can read in this space other than your book, what would you recommend? What is top of your mind? Or it could be online resources. It doesn't have to be book, anything. Um,
Sure. Look, there are some amazing books which are being written almost every day. I'm not able to keep up. I've read a few amazing books recently. I'll just be biased by recency rather than the of all time kind of scenario.
sure, sure.
Two, three, four books. So if you want to read about AI, as I said, Man's Final Invention is an amazing book. Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom is an amazing book. Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark is another one. Atlas of AI is just a completely amazing book. Joanne Crawford, Shiraz Joe's just written last year. I think those are the three or four books of late. Not of late, not all of late, but some of late, especially Crawford's, which I've read. Siddharth Mukherjee's The Emperor of All Maladies and The Gene and Intimate History, two different books, will give you the power of biology in that sense. A book by a guy called Martin Sheldrake called Our Entangled Lives, which is about fungi. And once you read about fungi, you will think that there is nothing more fascinating in this entire planet, including human beings. It kind of gave rise to the term wood wide web rather than world wide web, about how every tree talks to every other tree through fungi. Okay, and the fungi is like the world wide web of the forest in that sense. So sorry, I'm dwelling on that a bit.
No, no, no
But
problem.
that's another amazing book. So I'll kind of stop here, Anshuman. There's so many. They're just so
So
many.
I
No good
wanted to.
book on blockchain, by the way. Frankly, for some reason, I haven't yet found a really great book on blockchain. They're just too very transactional. The books. Okay, so there is space there for someone to write there.
And that's also because crypto probably takes the limelight, and it's easier to talk and write about crypto than on the underlying technology. So maybe we understand the reason, but who knows? Next year or this later this year, somebody may write. But I anyway wanted top of the mind recall for your books, so that we can read, and we don't have to do the hard work of looking for what we can or we should read. So we are almost on time. Quite a few comments coming in. Jaspreet, so Anand, Pradeep, and interestingly, Jaspreet, this is one of the few shows that my father is attending. So he's found it interesting. So
Thank
you've
you.
you've done well, right? I think
Thank you
uh,
so much.
Vikram, Anand, and many others. So yeah, so uh, I, time to close the show. Thanks once again, Jaspreet. Fantastic conversation. I treat all these sessions that I'm able to bring together as a teacher teaching, a student is kind of studying, and there is an audience, right? So this is a new form of teaching. Of course, like you said, you are yourself a student, but
Yeah,
life is a all who's a student in one class is a teacher in another class, kind of a coincidence. So we benefited from your wisdom and experience, and I'm so glad that you were also able to very authentically say that you didn't know about some of the topics which which is such a quality that not is not found very often. So thank you for that as well. To my wonderful regular audience, thank you once again, and to the ones who joined new this time, one quick request: if you like this show, on YouTube or LinkedIn, talk about it, give it a like, share, and a comment. Subscribe to or follow me so that I have the power to bring more such shows to you and many more speakers across. And of course, if you have a recommendation for a speaker and you think I can reach out, I can promise you that I will never back out from reaching out to people, and I'm totally fine with that. So, with that, we will end the show. Quick announcement: next show is a Qualities show on 30th of April, same time, Saturday, 11. So, the Qualities series for many of you is the series I do in collaboration with Kimpro. Kimpro is a consulting firm and a foundation. They focus on quality, and we bring quality professionals of repute to that show. So that is 30th of April. No show next week. And with that, I will end the show. Thank you very much, everybody, and Jaspreet. Certainly, on
Thanks.
behalf of Global, thank you.
Thanks. Just quick thing wanted to say,
Sure.
since people were asking so many about different technologies. So I do write a column every fortnight in Mint, which is now been running for 2.5 years. It's the
Yeah.
only thing I've done consistently in life without one break also. Okay, and I all of those columns are in jaspreetbindra.com, my website. So everything, this wood wide
Yeah,
web.
I'll bring that website quickly so that people can.
So all that stuff is there if you want to just browse, and then you can decide what you want to get deeper into. So
I'm glad you
just thought
mentioned
I'll
that. So
plug my website also. Thank you.
no, I did bring it up earlier. So I hopefully people have, and it's an easy catch. The name, so people
Yeah,
should be able to get it. Okay,
cool.
with that, we
Thank
will
you.
close the show. Thank you very much, everybody, and bye bye. Till we meet next. Thank you.
Thank you.